my Calligraphy for Beginners tutorial series. In this series, I'm going to teach you all about calligraphy from the basics and share all the tips and tricks with you. So if you're new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe, and if you like to receive notifications about my new videos, please click on the bell icon below. Okay, for this I will be using a HP LaserJet premium printer paper, 32 pounds. You can even use regular photocopy paper or any other paper you find in your household. For the Crayola marker, it doesn't matter. To start with, I have drawn the guidelines, the ascending line, the waistline, the baseline, and the descending line. These guidelines will be the ones which will be helping us to keep our wording straight and also to keep them in the same size. This tutorial we will be doing using a Crayola supertips marker, as it is an easy find in every household, and I believe anyone can do calligraphy even without fancy tools. Personally, I like using the Crayola marker a lot to do my calligraphy because it's easy to maneuver, and as a beginner you would find it's very easier to use than a brush pen. So today we will be learning the basic strokes in calligraphy. In calligraphy, every letter in the alphabet is formed with a combination of basic strokes. So once you get to know and practice the basic strokes, it will be much easier to start doing your calligraphy art. So let's get started. First, looking at how to hold the pen and draw the thick and thin strokes. Depending on the angle you hold or the pressure you apply on the pen, you can get the thick and thin strokes. So to get the thin stroke or the thin upstroke, you just have to barely touch the pen to the paper and you'll get that thin stroke. So when drawing the thick line, I keep the pen in the same angle to the paper which I drew the thin line with, and then I apply more pressure to get the thicker line. So there's another way to get a thicker line. That would be you angle the pen a little bit lower and then you draw the line with a little bit of pressure. So that way you get a thicker line than earlier. So these are 3 different thicknesses you can get. You'll be using only 2 thicknesses when you're doing calligraphy. So that will be the basic of how to use the Crayola marker to get different thicknesses of lines. So to get the upstroke, very light pressure, the downstroke, same angle, more pressure. To get a more thicker line, lower angle, more pressure. And then the basic tip of calligraphy is you don't write letters, you draw letters. Always keep this in mind and go as slow as you can. Now let's look at the basic strokes. In calligraphy, there are 10 different types of basic strokes. So those would be upstroke, downstroke, Overton, Underturn, compound curve, oval, reversed oval, ascending loop, descending loop, and the comma. So these will be the 10 different types of strokes which will come together to form letters. Now let's look at the first one, the upstroke. Upstroke is a very thin angular line. So upstroke is where you start from the baseline and go towards the ascending line in an angle. You apply very light pressure, as I mentioned earlier, to get the thin strokes. So continue practicing till you feel comfortable about the stroke. Now let's do a downstroke. The downstroke is a thick line which start from the ascending line and come down towards the baseline in an angle. So you can see I keep rotating my marker when I'm drawing. That is because when I'm applying pressure to the marker, the tip of the marker goes to a side. You see now what happened? It goes to an angle. So to avoid it going to one certain direction, I keep on rotating my marker so that it balances off. In the beginning, it might be a bit hard for you to do the rotation and apply pressure and draw at the same time, but keep practicing and you get the hang of it. It'll be something you do out of a habit. So here I do a bit thinner lines than the earlier. So basically the upstroke would be thin lines and downstrokes would be thicker lines. Next, let's look at the Overton. Overton, I start at the baseline and then go towards the baseline in a thin angle stroke, and then I turn it over and come down in a thicker stroke. It's basically an overturned U which goes up in a thin stroke and come down in a thicker stroke. Let me just draw some arrows to show how the strokes are drawn. The next stroke is the underturn. So for the underturn, I start from the downstroke. From the waistline, I come down to the baseline, and at the baseline, I turn up and go up in an upstroke. This is the shape of a U, which starts with a thick stroke and then finishes off in a thinner stroke. So now we will be combining the overturn and the underturn into one shape, which will be the compound curve. So you start at the bottom and then go up in a thin stroke, come down in a thicker stroke, and then go up again in a thin stroke. So it's a thin stroke up, a thicker stroke down, and then thin stroke up again. So always remember all three lines should be parallel to each other. Even in the underturn and overturn, the lines should be parallel. So next would be the oval. Oval can be really tough to start with. The key to do the best oval is to start in an upstroke. That means a little bit lower than the waistline. You go up in a thin stroke and then turn over and come down in a thicker stroke and then go up in a thin stroke and join where you started. So it's like you're starting a C and then completing it as an oval. So you see, I start a little bit lower than the waistline. That's the key to doing a perfect oval in calligraphy. This is a mistake most of the people do, where most of them start at the waistline in a downstroke, which does not give a perfect oval. Just like the oval, the reversed oval is done in the same way, just in the opposite direction. So in the oval you took the waistline turn to the left, but in the reversed oval you take the waistline turn to the right. So you can see you start a bit lower than the waistline and then you go up a bit and turn around to the right and then come down in a downstroke and then turn up again to a thinner stroke. In the beginning this will be a bit tricky, but the more you practice, the more you will get used to it. The next stroke we're going to look at would be the ascending loop. The ascending loop is different than the other strokes we did earlier, because in this we start from the waistline. So from the waistline we go towards the ascending line and turn very closer to it and come down in a downstroke. So you start at the waistline and then go up in a thin stroke or upstroke and then turn very closely and come down in a thicker stroke. Next we're going to look at the descending loop. So the descending loop, same as the ascending loop, you start at the waistline, but instead of going up, you come down in a thicker downstroke. You come down in a thicker downstroke and then turn very closely and go up in a thin upstroke towards the baseline. You end it right at the baseline, and always in calligraphy remember, do not cross a thick stroke and a thin stroke unless you come to do a flourish. So lastly we're going to look at a very simple stroke. This is not a major stroke. This is used in very few places or very few letters. This we're just mentioning so that we can include it in forming letters. That would be the comma. So basically it is a simple comma where you start at a thick dot and then you continue it to a small thin line. See, I start at the baseline and then come down a very little bit, not even halfway through, and then turn right up to a thin line and end it in the waistline again. So these are the 10 strokes in calligraphy: the upstroke, downstroke, overturn, underturn, compound curve, oval, reversed over, ascending loop, descending loop, and the comma dot. These 10 basic strokes are used to form letters in the alphabet. So if you would like to learn how to form letters with these strokes, don't forget to go to my channel and check out my videos. I have a video about that too. And don't forget, there is a practice sheet below for you to keep practicing your basic strokes before you get to forming letters. So don't forget, if you haven't already, please subscribe and turn on your bell notifications. Bye bye.